In his 8 years' experience with the road policing unit, PC Dan Patterson had learned that if you were the first car to arrive at a crash scene, you would find chaos. Even more so if it was raining, and to make matters worse, as he hurtled along Portland Road on blues and twos, because of budget cuts, he was single-crewed. The information he was receiving on his screen and over the radio was chaotic too. The first indication that the accident was serious was the number of people who'd phoned in to report it. 8 calls logged by the control room so far. A lorry versus a bicycle, a car also involved. He had been informed. A lorry versus a bicycle was never going to be good news. He began slowing down as he approached, and sure enough, what he observed through the rain-spattered windscreen was a scene of total confusion. An articulated, refrigerated lorry facing away from him and an ambulance just beyond it. He saw lying in the road a buckled bicycle, broken reflector glass, a baseball cap, a trainer, people all over the place, mostly frozen with shock, but others snapping away with their mobile phone cameras. A small crowd was gathered around the rear offside of the lorry. On the other side of the road, a black Audi convertible with a buckled bonnet was up against a cafe wall. He halted the brightly marked BMW estate car at an angle across the road, the first step to sealing off the scene, and radioed for backup, hoping to hell that it would arrive quickly. He needed about 20 different pairs of hands all at once. Just to make sure, he radioed for more cars and officers. Then, tugging on his cap and his fluorescent jacket, he grabbed an accident report pad and jumped out of the car. Then he tried to make a quick assessment of the scene, remembering all the elements that had been drummed into him from his initial training, his refresher courses, and his own considerable experience. A rain-drenched young man in a tracksuit ran over to him. "Officer, there was a van, a white van. It went through a red light, hit him and drove off." "Did you get the van's license number?" He shook his head. No, sorry, it all happened so fast." "What can you tell me about the van?" It was a Ford, I think, one of those transits. I don't think it had any writing on it." Pattendon made a note, then looked back at the young man. Witnesses often disappeared quickly, especially in rain like this. "I'll need your name and phone number, please," he said, writing the information on his pad. "Could you jump in the car and wait?" The young man nodded. At least he might stay around if he was warm and dry, Pattendon reasoned. He passed the information to the control room, then sprinted over to the lorry, clocking a severed leg lying in the road, but ignoring it for the moment, and knelt beside the paramedics. He looked briefly at the mangled, unconscious cyclist and the coiled intestines on the road and the blood, but was too wrapped up in all he had to deal with to be affected by it at the moment. "What can you tell me?" he asked, although he barely needed to ask the question. The male paramedic, whom he recognized, shook his head. "Not looking good, we're losing him." That was the only information the police constable required at this moment. All road fatalities were viewed as potential homicides rather than accidents, unless proved otherwise. As the only officer present, his first duty was to secure the area around the collision as a crime scene. His next was try to ensure that no vehicles were moved and to stop witnesses from leaving. To his relief, he could now hear the distant wail of sirens as, hopefully, more vehicles approached. He ran back to his car, calling out at everyone he passed. "Please, if you witnessed the accident, come over to my car. Give me your names and phone numbers." He opened the tailgate and dragged out a folding "Police Road Closed" sign, which he erected a short distance behind his car. At the same time, he shouted into his radio that there was a potential hit and run and he needed the fire brigade, the collision investigation unit, the inspector and backup PCSOs and uniformed officers. Then he grabbed a roll of blue and white police line "Do Not Cross" tape, tied one end around a lamppost and ran across the road, securing the other end around a parking sign on the pavement. As he was finishing, he saw 2 more officers from his unit running towards him. He instructed them to tape off the road on the far side of the lorry and grab names and phone numbers from anyone else who might be witnesses. Then inside the tape cordon, he pulled off his reflective jacket and threw it over the severed leg, wanting both to spare people the horror of it and to stop one particular ghoul in a raincoat taking any more photos of it. "Get the other side of the tape," he shouted at him. "If you're a witness, go to my car. If not, move along, please." More emergency vehicles were arriving. He saw a second ambulance and a paramedic car which would be bringing a specialist trauma doctor. But his main focus now was identifying the drivers of the lorry and the Audi from the mass of rubberneckers and potential witnesses. He saw a smartly dressed woman with rain-bedraggled hair standing near the open driver's door of the Audi. She was staring transfixed at the lorry. Hurrying over to her, he asked, panting, "Are you the driver of this car?" She nodded, eyes vacant, still staring over his shoulder. "Are you injured? Do you need medical assistance?" He just came out of nowhere. Came out of that side street, straight at me. I had to swerve, otherwise I'd have hit him." "Who?" Surreptitiously, he leaned forward, close enough to smell her breath. There was a faint reek of stale alcohol. The cyclist," she said numbly. "Were there any other vehicles involved?" A white van was right behind me, tailgating me." He had a quick look at the Audi. Although the bonnet was crumpled and the airbags had deployed, the interior looked intact. "Okay, madam, would you mind getting back in your car for a few minutes?" He gently took her shoulders and turned her around, away from the lorry. He knew that if drivers of vehicles involved in an accident stared at a serious casualty for too long, they would become traumatized. This woman was already partway there. He steered her over to the Audi and waited as she climbed in. Then, with some difficulty, pushed the door, which seemed to have a bent hinge, closed. As he did so, he saw a PCSO running over towards him. "Any more of you around?" Pattendon asked. "Yes, sir." The man pointed at two more police community support officers approaching a short distance away. "Okay, good. I want you to stay here and make sure this lady does not leave her vehicle." Then he ran towards the two PCSOs, delegating each of them to be a scene guard at either end of the crash site and to log anyone crossing the police line. At this point, to his relief, he saw the reassuring sight of his inspector, James Biggs, accompanied by his duty sergeant, Paul Wood, coming grim-faced through the rain towards him, both men holding a reel of police tape and a police traffic cone under each arm. At least now, the buck no longer stopped with him.